Hey everybody, and welcome to lucky week 13 of our piano adventure. Today we're going to do the usual rhythm warm-up. We're going to flip back to 2 octave scales, and then we're going to look at a piece of sight reading that I wrote that is going to not only incorporate inversion blending in our left hand, but also the relocating of the hand over multiple octaves in the right hand with a little sonatina, okay? So let's go ahead and head on over to the drum and get warmed up. Okay, here we are with our week 13 rhythm warm-up. We'll get started on line 1 at 50 BPM, and the metronome will represent the downbeats. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and change your hands. Here we go. 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3. Top line hands together. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, we've sped our metronome up to 55 BPM, and now we'll be looking at line 2 while hearing these clicks on the upbeats. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Switch your hands. 1, and 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Top line. 1, and 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, for line 3, we'll be going at 60 BPM with our metronome on halftime, so it will be set at 30, and these clicks will represent the first and the third upbeats. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, and 2, and 3, 4. Switch hands. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, and 2, and 3. Top line. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. There we go. All right. Last but not least, on line 4, we'll speed our metronome to 35, which means we will be going at 70. The metronome will be at halftime, and it will represent the second and the fourth upbeat. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, and 2, and 3, and switch hands. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, and 2, and 3, and top line. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Alrighty, now that we're all warmed up, we'll head back over to the piano. Let's take a look at 2-octave scales this week. Now, one thing that I hope that we are learning from doing our 2-octave scales is that instead of needing to be told what the correct fingers are all the time, we should be developing an instinct for where to put our fingers, okay? And so I want to take a look at this point that I have down here, point B, all right? Because this is what I consider to be sort of the universal principle behind creating good finger patterns and having good finger pattern habits, all right? And so if you really think about it, what's going on as you look at these tables is that you're alternating between groups of 3 fingers and groups of 4 fingers, okay? Now, one thing that's important to think about, so we'll take a look at C major for this one, all right, is that when you're moving in what I call the pinky direction, okay, you're gonna target with your thumb. So after you play 3 fingers or 4 fingers, you will lift your hand up and move over and replace your hand down on the thumb. For example, here's 1, 2, 3. We're moving in the pinky direction, so we'll lift the hand up and place the thumb down. So you're targeting with your thumb, which is why some people tend to have trouble moving in one direction and another direction is much easier. I find that when you're moving in the pinky direction on either hand, it's easier because you're targeting the next note with your thumb, and we have a little bit more facility with our thumbs than we do when we move in the thumb direction. So when you move in the thumb direction, and the reason I'm saying pinky and thumb direction is obviously because it's different in your left and your right hand, right? So when you're moving in your thumb direction, it becomes a little more tricky because then you have to target not with your thumb, but with your middle finger or your 4th finger. And especially that 4th finger, we don't have as much facility as with those as we do our thumb. So for example, when I'm coming down here, I would lift up, target with my middle finger, lift up, target with my 4th finger, lift up and target with my middle finger, right? And so when you're moving octaves, you're usually using 3 and 4 fingers alternating, and you have to get used to, as you're moving in a thumb direction, to targeting notes with your 4th or your 3rd finger. Now, as always, the last sentence down there with my little emoji is that as you are moving your arm up and down the piano, we want to lift our arm and place. Lift our arm and place. Regardless of whether you're targeting with your thumb or targeting with your 3rd and your 4th finger, it is always a lift and a move. It is not a twist. It is not a twist, because that makes you look like you're doing the chicken, and we don't need to do that when we're playing the piano, and it could hurt you. Let's go ahead and talk about the 3 scales that we have today. You'll see that so far they follow the same pattern as usual. We do have a slight exception here in B major, and that's because of the nature of this scale as we saw in 1 octave. We're going to start with A major, and we'll start slowly and use the finger techniques and habits that we just discussed, okay? So here's our right hand. As we move in the pinky direction, remember we're going to be targeting with our thumb, moving in groups of 3 and 4 alternatively until we get up here at the top, where we come back down, and now we will be targeting with our middle finger and our 4th finger as we move in the thumb direction. Okay, now we're going to do our left hand. Moving in the thumb direction, we'll be targeting with our 3 and our 4, and as we come down, we'll target with our thumb. Okay, and then we'll take a look at our hands together. Okay, now remember, the more you do this, the more you will also bring everybody's friend, muscle memory, in to help, right? And this is one of the things about muscle memory, right? We should use muscle memory to memorize, to teach our muscles to memorize these most basic parts of music. We should never rely on muscle memory to learn our pieces for us, right? Our muscle memory is meant for learning the instrument, okay? So scales and chords, we do want those in our muscle memory. We don't want to rely too much on it for our pieces, okay? Let's take a look at E major now, starting with our right hand. We're going to play it 2 octaves, moving in the pinky direction. Means we're going to be targeting with our thumb. And on the way back down, targeting with our 3rd and our 4th finger. And our left hand. Finally, hands together. Okay, let's take a look at B major now. And this is a perfect example of why we want to learn good finger habits as opposed to just memorizing rules by rote. And that's because there are exceptions where a certain shape or geometry on the keyboard forces us to do something that's different than what is normal, but yet if we have that instinct, we can figure out a solution that works within it. So maybe in this case with our left hand, we're going to be doing groups of 4 2 times instead of alternating, right? That's okay. Also, don't forget, on B major, this is at the bottom of the circle, right? So it's actually very easy because we're going to be using all 5 black keys and you only have to remember 2 white keys, which is B and E. Let's take a look at the right hand first. It's going to actually be very exactly the same to what we've been doing. And now here's where it happens with our left hand. But it doesn't feel weird. You can see that you need 4 fingers 2 times in a row. And so it just makes sense, all right? Let's try that hands together. Okay, now remember, I always play these at a nice medium tempo, but you can take them as slow as you need, all right? The more you break it down into hands separate and slow practice, the better you'll get. Also remember that you may not need to perfect this. You may not need to master this now, right? You know, sometimes scales take years to master and we revisit them. As we revisit them, we master them even further, right? So we're only taking the 2nd step in our scale mastery. So unit 5 is going to be all about scale mastery using what I call the gold standard scale method, all right? So don't think you need to get these just too perfect. If any of them are giving you trouble, we will see them again. Excellent. Let's talk about today's sight reading, all right? Now, here's the thing. I wanted to combine 2 different things. I wanted to combine the major scales that we're playing up and down the piano multiple octaves, and I also wanted to combine inversion blending, and a perfect genre for that is the classical sonatina, all right? Now, what does a sonatina mean? The style is usually defined by its form, and it is a circular form, okay? The sonatina starts, it explores something, and then it ends up back where it started. It's a very classical type of storytelling, right? And so we start a sonatina at the exposition where we learn the very first ideas in the key signature. We move away from that key center and we explore some ideas that are still related but maybe a little different. And then we return into the recapitulation at the end, all right? So we have the exposition, we have the development, and then we have the recap, all right, the recapitulation. Now, I wrote this sonatina in A major because we're practicing those keys this week, all right? And we're gonna take a quick look at the harmonies now, okay? So first you can see that our 1 is gonna be in A major. So we might as well go ahead and fill in the other chords. One of the reasons is because, you know, the Sonatina, in my opinion, yes, they do offer some harmonic surprises and some neat things, but one of my favorite details about the Sonatina is that it works with the rules really well. So there's definitely a beauty towards bending the rules and doing unusual things with the rules and going to interesting places, but there's also a beauty that you can achieve through just following the rules and executing them to the best of your abilities. So with this Sonatina, we're not going to get too crazy today with the harmonies, and we're really going to stick to these basics right here. We have the 1, the 4, and the 5. You always want to be aware of those 3 chords. So let's take a look at what we've got. Now, the beginning of this Sonatina right here actually is not where the main subject starts, and we kind of are noticing that because we see that we have octave E's. We have the 5, and if we look at this scale right here, we notice that it's also more centered around E, okay, giving us sort of an E sound. And so we would label that the 5. I kind of put a special fanfare right there that leads us into the piece, which means that the actual piece is going to get started right here, okay? So this is where we actually introduce ourselves to the first subject and ascending A major scale with a little flourish at the end, okay? And you'll also notice that the left hand makes it very easy to see the chords, all right? And this is another technique that defines the style of the Sonatina. But you can see here that what we've done is we've taken this A major chord and we've broken it up. We have our A in the bottom, we have the E up top, and the C sharp in the middle, right? Line, line, line. But what we've done is we've animated it in this way. And what that is called is the Alberti bass, all right? And the beautiful thing about Alberti bass is it provides us rhythm and harmony, and we can use inversion blending to move around. So the left hand is going to be using an Alberti bass to be our motor, and it's going to be blending its harmonies together through inversion blending, as you'll see, all right? Which is nice because the right hand is going to be doing fireworks. It's going to be moving up and down the keyboard. Therefore, our left hand is going to be rather simplified with how far it needs to move, because instead of having to actually move so much, it's really just going to be doing more of this, okay? So from the 1, as you can see through in the process of inversion blending, we hit the 5, all right? And we're going to stay on the 5 right here in this measure. And then what we're going to do is we're going to see some secondary dominant, all right? So secondary dominant, remember, is when if we have our 4 right here, then we want to use the 5 of the 4. We can tell that it's probably a secondary dominant because we see that there's that G natural, and we see some added sharps in there. And so accidentals are kind of alerting us to the fact that this may be some sort of secondary dominant. And in this case, we have the 5/7 of the 4, which is kind of interesting because the 5/7 of the 4 is the 1, but it's in its dominant form, right? And so we are so close to being able to study dominant chords together. I'm really looking forward to getting into that, but you can see that the dominant flavor of the 1 chord was used here as a secondary dominant of the 4, okay? Now it's still not that weird because we're just moving around the circle 1 notch at a time. We're not jumping across it or all over the place. We're just moving those dominoes. Secondary dominants are not the biggest thing in the world, right? Now, here we go. I am a sucker for a minor 4. This is probably the most liberty I took here of changing the 4 to minor because I love the way that the minor 4 resolves to the 1, all right? Now, it can't be the end of a classical phrase unless you put a big 5/7 literally spelled out in a stack that leads to your 1, right? A very obvious 5/7 1. You know, there's nothing wrong with following the rules and doing it very obviously, okay? But now we've finished the exposition. This is the end of the first section, all right? And so now we are entering into the development where things get a little bit weirder, where we take the fragments of the ideas and we move them into different key centers. And in fact, it is not uncommon to move away from the key center, which is A, and sort of switch either to the 5 or the 4 and explore those key centers. We are highlighting the 4 in this area. We're focusing on the 4 a little bit more, and therefore we are going to be seeing more of these 5/7s of 4s, right? Of course, you're going to finally see the 5 of the 5 in our B major to get to the 5. Then we have our 5/7 of 4 again, 2 or 4. And then finally, if you take a look here, we're going to have a familiar line right here, all right, with our 5. And this is the beginning, back to the beginning, right? Our return, the thing that set us up all along. And so therefore we don't need to analyze the recap, all right? In this case, we don't need to analyze the recap because it is going to be exactly the same as the exposition until we get to this very end part where we have, just like I said, it doesn't get more classical to announce your ending with a good old-fashioned 1, 5/7, 1, and then you know what? Hit that 1 a few more times to let them really know that it's over, okay? So there we have it. Those are our harmonies. That's our form, right? Now we can start to put our hands on this, okay? So first and foremost, let's go ahead and walk through the right hand, okay? So we're gonna start on this E nice and high, and we're gonna be moving down, right? So we're gonna be using our 2-octave skills here. Sometimes you're gonna stay in one place right now, spread out to the octave. And finally, we're climbing again. All right, now in the development, it's gonna change. We're gonna stay in place, relocate. A little 2-octave climbing. Again, we're gonna rise in one 5-finger area. We're gonna relocate a 5-finger area up to here on the 4. And finally, let's climb back to the beginning on our descending scale. And of course, the rest of the recap continues in that fashion. So let's take a look at the inversion blending that we're gonna have in our left hand. So we're gonna have just some nice, easy Alberti bass using voice leading. Look at that. Stay in place for this 5. And look how beautifully this voice leads into the 5/7 of the 4. Very minimal motion. And here we are on the 1. Our 5/7. All nice voice leading. Now check this out. It looks like we missed a 1 here. Sorry about that, y'all. But if we've stuck with the video, then you'll find it. All right. Now this next section, we ended on this 1. Now look how easy it is to turn that into our dominant by changing the A to a G. Here's our 4. Very nice voice leading. All right, so there's our hands separate. You want to make sure you know where your right hand is moving, and then have faith that your left hand will find its way through inversion blending. Now, let's try to put these hands together and see what happens. Okay, there is Sonatina in A major. Now, remember, there is no shame in playing it at this tempo. Or even slower, all right? Take your time with this piece and let it come to you, all right? If you like it and you want to purchase it, you can purchase all of my sheet music, rhythm warm-ups, and lesson outlines at my website, pianodojo.com. Happy practicing. I'll see you next week with more inversion blending.